When we first started talking about today's meeting, I mentioned maybe we could talk about what the opposition is talking about, so proposing in terms of their hydrogen proposal. And we had Peter Malinauskas here last week. I understand the Premier, the government, also has a hydrogen proposal of some sort. What does businesses say? What do you think about either of these?
Let's look at hydrogen as a potential source of energy for South Australian businesses. And Antonio and your listeners, I encourage everybody to look at hydrogen also as a potential export for South Australia. And they are two different things in many ways. So Business SA, of course, we are the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in South Australia, and we represent all industry sectors, and we work with business owners every day of the week. And a lot of the business community are saying, well, how can we access hydrogen in the future as a source of energy to do one thing? And that's to reduce our energy costs. So if you are a business and you're a manufacturing business and you have an energy intensive business, as a consequence, your energy costs are a key input cost to your profitability, to your business. So this is why we take a very special interest in this matter. Now, there are other benefits. There are environmental benefits. Hydrogen, of course, is a zero emission fuel source, especially green hydrogen. So that's the opening preamble. And I'm very, very happy, Antonio, to unpack that at quite a granular level if your listeners would like to hear it.
Yeah, I think we can. We should, because even when we were talking about it with Peter Malinauskas, he was proposing using the solar panels that we have in South Australia and the fact that they produce excess capacity, excess energy that could be used to fuel the system, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But both the incumbent government and the opposition have that shared aspiration in terms of looking towards hydrogen as a potential fuel source. The reason why the potential for South Australia to actually create hydrogen energy is so tangible is because we have such an abundant excess of renewable energy in our grid at a lot of times of the year. So what does that mean practically? This is why we talk about green hydrogen, because there are various ways you can make hydrogen. But by repurposing the excess renewable energy, which really is kind of unspent, so to speak, it doesn't go anywhere, by harvesting that excess renewable energy, even more acutely during peak periods, redirecting it towards producing hydrogen, because the highest cost of producing hydrogen, ironically, is energy. So, and you create hydrogen, which is effectively a hydrogen fuel cell. And effectively, that's very energy intensive and actually somewhat water intensive in order to create that. So this is why South Australia actually has a head start over every other jurisdiction in Australia and many other jurisdictions around the world. So the business community are very keen to see whether that can translate into lower energy costs. The opposition leader, Peter Malinauskas, is actually taking that a step further. He is suggesting that there would be a state-owned hydrogen power plant which would be generating that energy. And this is where the point of difference is, in all probability, between the opposition policy and possibly a incumbent government policy, because both of them believe in hydrogen. So, which I must say, for South Australia, for its economy and in all probability for its environment, it's always a good thing when you have both government and opposition arguing the detail about how they will both do something, but noting they're both committed to doing it. The state government, in all probability, I would imagine, would be more orientated towards private industry taking up the mantle of investing into a hydrogen electrolyser at scale, and whereby the state opposition seem to be more orientated towards the state doing it as a state-owned asset. And that's really the key difference.
Okay. So that's a substantial point. I didn't pick up on that one. Very important. So interesting. So we're using the sunk costs. So a lot of the costs is not there to be created afresh, but there are good environmental and economic benefits from trying to utilise hydrogen as an export, as well as for use in our own generation of energy. Okay, cool. So that's a substantial agreement, I guess, and Business SA seems to be in favour of this general approach.
We do. The exciting news, Antonio, is that in economies like South Korea and like Japan, and there are more, they are very, very, it's very logical that they're going to pivot their energy needs towards a much higher reliance on hydrogen. And hydrogen can be exported in a manner not dissimilar to how, let's say, liquefied natural gas is exported in those big ships, which we can all probably visualize. It's similar but different. So you can literally put hydrogen into a ship. You can ship it, so to speak, interstate and overseas to markets like South Korea and Japan, which could position South Australia very well, not only as using hydrogen for local domestic energy at a reduced cost and really putting some considerable price competition into the market for South Australian businesses, which is always good, but actually the bigger opportunity financially for the state ultimately could be export. And that's where the real scale comes from, because if you've got an entire country who are very orientated and if not somewhat dependent on a particular source of energy, you can see what happens. So not dissimilar in a very different fashion like China's dependency on Australia's iron ore. It's a very, very large commercial activity as a result of having a big customer.